you're gonna give us a little bit of a journey into your powerlifting, because I know you're from a finance background. I've already pressed
Yes.
record, by the way. So
Okay, cool. Straight in, straight in.
yeah, you're from a finance background. So how did you get into powerlifting from there, or was it a uni?
Yeah, so I guess it goes back to school, which is also when I met Yusuf. So I met Yusuf in the gym while we were both at school, so both like 17, 18. Started training, was like overweight as a kid, got like played rugby at school. Gym came along with that, and then there's just a competition of like, well, who can lift the most in the school gym on the school rugby team, like who's got the biggest bench press, biggest squat, biggest deadlift. Realized that I liked the training more than the sport a lot of the time.
Yeah.
Went to uni, tried something different, tried rowing at uni, but the same thing, right? Like there's a big emphasis on training and having a gym program and having a nutrition program and all that sort of stuff. So it was actually once I left all of that, so I like left doing sport, started work. So I was in the finance world and I was just looking for something to still do. Like I didn't want to commit to like evening sessions on a team or anything like that, but I knew I was going to the gym anyway. So powerlifting was just like a way of making the gym into a sport.
Yeah.
So like it fit what I was looking for perfectly, really. And about a year after working, it's like starting the grad scheme in finance, I did my first competition. So it had been like end of 2013. I did my first competition in powerlifting. And to be honest, it was Yusuf, my business partner, who encouraged me to do that, because he'd been doing it quite a bit up until then. I'd never even thought about it, and he really encouraged me, came along with me in my first competition, all that sort of stuff. So yeah.
Are you of the belief that you're not really a powerlifter unless you actually compete, or are you not so elitist?
I don't really care. Like if someone wants to call themselves a powerlifter, like if they focus on squat, bench, deadlift, then I kind of think there's no reason to not compete, because
Yeah.
it just adds structure into your training, and it gives you there's nothing quite like the prep and the build up for a big competition with your training. Like it just feels different. And the same as any sport, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly. I had this chat with a strongman as well, and I've actually had this chat with a couple bodybuilders as well. It's like you're not really, especially in those types of competitions, you're not really competing, right? Like it's not you versus another person. All right, you might adjust your lift based on someone else and to try and get first place, but not really. You're just trying to get there as another marker, and it just puts more emphasis on that. Like and again,
definitely.
it's not for. We're gonna get into like you actually competing like for a high level, but it's really not for anyone else. It's not like rugby where you're competing as a team and you're doing it for your mates quite a lot of the time. You're actually just doing it as a sort of representation of yourself.
Yeah, and it's a different. I suppose. Well, I mean, I've never played like aside from school team. I've never played competitive rugby. I rowed for the uni that I went to, but again, that's different because like there's something about competing in a powerlifting competition where it's a skill by itself. Like it's all very well working up to a heavy single in a gym session with your music on, where you've got the environment as you want it. You squat when you want to. It's at the time of day when you want to. You've got nothing else on your mind. No one's watching you. But then replicating that in a competition, like after having waited around for 3 hours in a weird place, it's a different. It's almost like a separate part of the sport. So
Yeah.
I think to strictly say, I'm a power lifter. I think everyone's got their gym lifts and then their competition lifts, and for most people they're different. For most people, there's quite a gap. I just think it's a good experience. Like the first time I did it, it's the same with like a lot of my friends who are now really into the sport. The first time I competed, it was just like, wow, okay, I can see myself really getting into this. It's quite a rush to
Yeah.
lift heavy on a platform.
Yeah, you're looking out to everyone. I did. I've done one proper Olympic weightlifting competition, and it's the same thing.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
again, actually, you know how much of a skill it is. Well, the Olympic lifts are probably a bit more skilled than technically than the power lifts, but
Definitely. Yeah,
it's like
definitely.
it's still like I was like I think 30 kilos off my best or something like ridiculous, and it's just like I have no idea like how like because you just get one shot.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
crazy, but yeah, so it is
Yeah.
completely different. And I actually put that in a post on my Instagram a while back as well, talking about like why are people training for better one rep max lifts if that's not your end goal. If it is your end goal, you know it, you're training for it because it's like a completely different skill. And
Yeah.
then there's the 1 rep
Yeah.
max layered even more so, I guess, with people watching and like 2 hour burrito breaks or whatever it is with powerlifting.
Yeah. And all the rules as well, right? Like you've got, and it's the same in weightlifting, you've got all these criteria that a lift's got to hit. So in powerlifting especially, you've got
Oh
on a
yeah,
bench press, you unrack it, and then you're waiting for someone to tell you to start, and then you hold it on your chest till someone gives you the press command. So it's a different thing to like going to your local gym and working up to a heavy single. It's a unless you train that way, which obviously you should do as you get more serious. But yeah, I unless there's like a reason why not. If you're into strength training, I think compete in something. At least give it a try. It doesn't have to be powerlifting, but a strength sport.
yeah, just to give you an actual
adds a
deadline focus, right? And
Exactly.
fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And then your biggest focus of your powerlifting career so far would have been qualifying for Worlds. How did you go about
Yeah.
that? How long into your training career was that?
To be honest, it was a whirlwind. Like my first competition was 2013, end of 2013. I then got into it, did another couple of local competitions, and then did nationals in 2014. So I don't know how much people listening know about it, but the idea is you have to hit in your weight class, you have to hit a certain total, so the combination squat, bench, deadlift. And if your total is above a certain number, you qualify to go to nationals, which is like the best in Britain.
And that total has to be in a regional competition or a sanctioned competition. Does it now with COVID and stuff?
To be honest, I don't know. There's been some weird stuff in the US with their nationals. And
I know they've done it with strongman. They've you have to look at the plates, put the plates on the scale, and then show.
Oh right.
Yeah.
No, I think it would still be because the judging, especially in the IPF, which is what I compete in, so International Powerlifting Federation, have got all these kind of bodies beneath them. The rules are so strict. I think you probably still have to go to a competition. So everyone's just waiting for competitions to restart again.
Waiting for that vaccine.
Exactly, yeah. So you got a total above a certain number, you go to nationals. So that was my first ever nationals, and I placed third in that competition. Which was just like, whoa, like how have I managed this? And the standard back then, so this is 2014, the standard back then is not what it is now, right? It was a less popular sport. But a guy called Tom Martin came first. Don't know whether you've heard of him. He's a pretty strong guy. Used to be a sprinter, like extremely strong. Guy called Pierre came second, I came third. And basically, Tom decided that he was going to move federations, so didn't go to Worlds. Didn't go to Europeans, didn't go to Worlds. And then I got the invite.
Move federations.
Yeah, so I mean, yeah, he moved to a federation with different rules, I guess. So he can use different bars, and I mean, I don't know. I don't know what Tom's doing, but he's
fair enough.
Yeah, he's a strong guy. Like 400 kilo deadlift. He's in a class of his own really at this point. But yeah, so he didn't go. He decided not to go, and I got the call up for Europeans and Worlds, and it was like 2015 was like Europeans in March. So I was flying out to Prague, competing against some really really high level lifters, and then doing all right in that. I came about halfway up the class in that. And then got the invite to go to Worlds, and I got absolutely thrashed at Worlds because it really is like. Have you heard of Lane Norton before?
Yeah,
I imagine you probably have. Yeah, so he was there, competing alongside Lane Norton, who's squatting 305 kilos or whatever he squatted,
shouting the whole time with striated quads, bicep tricep separation. You're like, I'm in the wrong place, man. But yeah, so that was a hell of an experience. It was only like a year and a half in to my powerlifting career, and yeah, all the stuff we spoke about, like the feeling of prep for that. I think the thing that I underestimated more, still now I look back on it, and I had a terrible meet at Worlds. Like a really, those days in the gym where you get under the bar and it just feels heavy. Yeah.
Feeling that in the warm up room for Worlds is not what you want. So, but there's like a 5-hour time zone difference. So it was in Finland. Me and my girlfriend flew from the UK. We arrived in Amsterdam, changeover, I rang the guy who was picking us up from the IPF because he had to get this approved bus, and he rang me back and was like, oh, I'll be at the airport at 3 a.m. I was like, what? It's like, yeah, I'll be there at 3 a.m. to pick you up. So we had to like get like little bits of sleep in the airport until 3 a.m. Then there's like a 2-hour drive.
What?
And there's not really any darkness in Finland, so it was like light the whole time.
Yeah.
So, or at least so I had like 24, 36 hours in this hotel with no darkness to try and get some sleep and like get back to feeling normal. And I think the time I was lifting, it would have been like 7 a.m. UK time. So lots, I mean, I'm not making excuses, but it's just the nature of international competition, right? Which is, I wasn't ready for. Like I should have flown out earlier.
It's also like if you're doing international, like I find this with like rugby is like, this is something that the players never take like into consideration. Like you're always told when you're going to train, and a lot of time, like when I used to play for Poland, we would train, like they would organise every training and they would organise them with a purpose. I remember one time, I didn't know that we were kicking off late until the day of the game, and then I was like, that's why we've been training so damn late all this week. Like I was so confused, and then I realised,
such a difference.
you have to think about all that stuff, organise all that stuff, and then perform is a bit of a ball ache, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's David Hay, the boxer. I think like, when he has a fight at like 11 p.m, he moves his entire life around that time for the entire prep for the fight. And like you hear stuff like that and you think, God, that's so extreme. But when you experience it and like you're performing at a time you're not used to performing, when you'd normally be like sat on the sofa, like scrolling through social media, having a coffee, and you like there's Lane Norton and you're trying to get amped up and squat the heaviest weight you've ever squatted. It's just it's not how you should go to a competition like that. But it was a hell of an experience. Like it was awesome to do, but it felt very much just like off this bus. And before I knew it, I was in a competition trying to move weights that I.
What were your lifts?
At that meet, it was like I can't remember. I think I might have missed 220 squat. But it was around 220, like a 145 bench, and then a 280 deadlift, 285 deadlift.
What was your weight?
I was in the 93s, so I'll have been 91, 92 kilos.
Is that so? Like, do you weigh in like an hour, a couple hours before, or what? Is there?
So it's morning of normally, or I mean, at that level, it's like a 2-hour weigh-in, I believe. So,
like a little rehydration, but not really.
Yeah. So like in some competitions, in some sports, they do a 24-hour weigh-in, so you can weigh in like a day, full 24-hour window before the event. In the IPF, it's technically supposed to be 2 hours, which they don't always adhere to locally because they just don't have the resource. But somewhere like that, like your weigh-in is like 2 hours before you're on the platform. So you're pretty. You're not. I wasn't like losing loads of weight to make weight, but you don't want to fly to Finland and then weigh in heavy, right? So
so that's why you're giving yourself a little bit of wiggle room.
Exactly, yeah. Because you probably have this yourself. Like you get off a plane, you're a kilo or two heavier for a couple of days because you're retaining some water. Like you do not want that to happen. When literally like that you are there for the team. There's only a certain number of spots on the team. You've got to be there to get the points on the board and all this sort of stuff. So it was good. But I mean, looking back, there's so much I'd have done differently, and so I got to approach the whole thing totally differently. But it was an awesome experience.
And then, are you planning on ever trying to get back to that level?
I'd like to, I think, which is like a recent shift, to be honest, in how I feel about it. But the standard now is so much higher. Is it the top end isn't like that much higher, but that middle sort of 95% to 85% is just filled with that much more people that you can't have like an off day if you're in that category. Yeah. Well, so like that year, excuse me, so 2015 nationals. So I think I competed like 4 times in that year. I went from placing third, and like, to be honest, placed third with like a fairly average total. Like I didn't have a really good meet and I still placed third. A year later, so went and did Euros, went and did Worlds, went and did nationals again, and didn't even come top 10 with a similar total. So like that's a representation just year to year of I think there was a few people who kind of made the sport a bit more trendy, and like SBD came in and all the British team had SBD kit, and it was a bit of a different sport than it was a couple of years ago. So more people wanted to compete, standard went up. So in the 93s now, like a total under 700 kilos just doesn't even get considered for anything. You need to be totaling like mid 700s to 800 kilos.
Yeah.
Whereas I would have come third at nationals with a 640 total.
Yeah.
So there's a big jump. And you're right, like the top 10 in a weight class, very, very competitive place to be. If you can get in amongst that, it's still hard to place because everyone's so strong at that level.
And I think that's kind of why I asked the question earlier about like if if someone just doesn't compete and they just do the lifts, like would you consider them a powerlifter? Like because the sport's grown so much, it's like you might as well just go and compete because you don't have to. Like it used to be, like with these niche sports, you're like, oh, I only want to compete if I'm going to be competitive, I'm going to place in the top, whatever. But now they're just like more and more freaks that are appearing. It's just like, just do it and have fun. And that does tie to rugby quite a lot because I see it a lot with, you get certain competitive people and they want to play for the highest level, and like I find that no matter what level you play, you still do it for you. It's still about your enjoyment. And like I'm sure, like it was a cool experience competing in Worlds, but like some of the regional ones where you had your family there and you made some really good lifts, or even probably you look back and they're even more fond memories.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah,
really?
Couldn't agree more. So so like I mean, locally when like my dad comes and watches, and like I have a group of friends watching, and it's a bit of a laugh. And it's competitive because no one's there to win Worlds, or even qualify for Worlds. You can like push your third deadlift attempt and go for something fun, or and it's just you're having a good time rather than worrying about everything. And like there's all this pressure about you need to be on this line at a certain time, and you need to have done warm up 3 by this time. And so I agree. Like from the perspective of enjoying the sport, I think it's the same with any sport, right? Like everyone wants to be at the most competitive level, but they wouldn't necessarily want that if they really knew what the ins and outs of that were like. Right? It doesn't get more enjoyable as you get higher up the chain. A lot of the time, there's just more pressure. It's the same thing. Like the people you're going up against are still as strong as you, if not stronger, and you have to try and win. So whether that level's up here or at a more like at a lower pressure level, it's the same experience, really.
Yeah, I think the highs of the top end can be higher, maybe. Yeah, but I guess it's all relative. But like even like, I feel it's the more like your general like lower level fun that you're having, then those are the experiences you want to just keep going for. And that's kind of what I say to a lot of the amateur guys that I'm playing with, or that I'm coaching. And I find it when I'm just playing touch, like I still have just as much fun just going and play like touch rugby on a Wednesday night with just old people. it's just a laugh, and I think that's what it is. I did want to talk about this episode I heard you do on Modern Wisdom about the fitness menopause, and is that something that you think was a fallout from Worlds? Or do you want to briefly explain what fitness menopause sort of means? It's quite a good name because it's very self-explanatory. But
yeah, sure. So I guess like the theory that we like, so Chris, who's the main host or like the owner of the Modern Wisdom show, and then Yusuf and myself, who go on it quite a bit. Like we talk about this a lot, that most people in their kind of mid-20s have fitness as a fairly big priority in their life, right? Like especially if you've played sports or competed in something before, it's like the thing that you prioritize. You would never dream of missing a session. You would never dream of like not hitting your nutrition for the day. It's like a huge part of your life. And I think certainly a lot of my friends, like I just turned 30. A lot of my friends just turned 30. And I think a lot of them who are into training kind of go through this, like, like can't really be bothered. It gets a bit boring. It kind of doesn't really serve the same purpose anymore because you're not necessarily trying to get shredded, or you've competed in stuff that's like, and for me, having been to Worlds, it's like, well, what's beyond that? Like there is nothing beyond that. It's not, even if I got back there again, it's just getting back to where I was. It's not progressing. And so that I don't think it was necessarily Worlds that did that, but there was kind of a phase after that where I tried to keep competing. So I kept competing for quite a few years, like on and off, 3 or 4 years. Moved up a weight class to try and get more competitive that way, and basically ended up getting injured. Like I got injured under like a 1 rep max squat attempt. Like physically felt something in my quad like snap at the bottom of a rep, which was awful. Still like you still play it over in your head whenever you go to train, but that triggered this like, right, I'm done with this. Like I've gained all this weight. I put so much time into this. I'm sore all the time, and now I can barely walk. I'm not like I'm done with this sport, and that led to like trying CrossFit for 6 months. I did the CrossFit Open. I did some bodybuilding. I got really into golf. I tried lots of different things that weren't powerlifting to try and find the buzz again, like the high of like training going really well. And I think that a lot of people I know resonate with that. I don't know whether you like, do you have anything, or have you ever had that?
Yeah. When I stopped playing rugby, I did the same thing. Like I stopped playing rugby within 6 months. I did, or maybe 6 months, might have been 8 months. But I retired because I got like too many concussions. I then was like, right, I'm just going to get as lean as possible and like do like a photo shoot thing. Did that, and then I was just like, okay, now time to really add muscle. But it's so slow and so tedious, and it's not like and it's the same with strength and quite a lot of pursuits actually. But the better you get at something, what's the word? Like it just gets that much harder. You need more units of effort to then add 1 extra kilo, then an extra kilo, and every extra kilo becomes significantly harder than the last, and put your body under that much more strain. It was just like, what am I doing now? And then I found jiu-jitsu, and that was like my that's been my thing that I've kept pushing for, and it's given me a bit more context. And I say this for the rugby guys as well. It's like they have, what's cool about training for rugby is that you've got quite a few different elements that when you hit that, like it's the progress that's addicting, and then when you realize that everything is that much harder to keep achieving, like even if you're gonna even make any achievements after a certain level, it's like where do you go from there? And so with rugby, you've got speed, power, strength, muscle, fat loss, fitness, different types of fitness. You've got so many different avenues that you can, almost keep going through those sort of newbie phases that I think it's quite enjoyable, and it gives you a context to everything. And jiu-jitsu is the one where they've got like, their biggest thing is that, they've got people that have been doing it for 40 years and are still quote unquote learning because there's so many different sort of scenarios. But I definitely found a few phases where that was like, it was, you're ticking the box, but you're not, and you're saying, I'm going and ticking the box, but it's even like less than that. It's like, when people can't even be bothered to put that first half of the tick, it's just the line.
And I think like something that definitely happened to me was I started, like before I got into powerlifting, was like, I just want to get abs, because I think having abs will be like, that's the thing, that's it. And once I've got abs, it'll be amazing. And I got that, and I was like, all right, done that now what? I'm gonna deadlift. Like, so initially it was 200 kilos, and it was, and the line just keeps going up, right? It's like now what I want is a 700-pound deadlift, because it's 5 kilos heavier than I've done at the moment. But you think, oh, well, I'll hit that strength number and then that'll be that. You do that, and you think, all right, well now what? So and
you've got so much work once you've hit those milestones to keep those milestones. That's the thing. It's like that, the 4 weeks to being shredded. It's like, okay, even if that was possible, like if it just took 4 weeks to get shredded, what sort of lifestyle did you change then, and what's going to happen in the next 4 weeks?
Exactly. Yeah. And it's, I think you just like, you get a bit older and you realize that like actually going, not training for a week and just going out and having a couple of beers and not counting your macros and not training and not feeling sore all the time is actually pretty good fun.
Yeah. Too fun. And then it makes it makes it so much harder to get started again.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think most people I know who've been really into fitness have gone through that kind of phase where fitness used to be a huge priority and they used to turn down social stuff for fitness, and now it's the other way around. And then that usually ends with like getting back into something. So I guess for you it was jiu-jitsu, right? Like you can stop that and you think, right, I need to find something else, otherwise I'm going to be like so far out of shape. It's like you can't rescue it. But it's I think it's just a symptom of like pursuing any goal really. When you hit it, if you don't have a plan for what's next, you're left in this limbo phase for a while.
Yeah. So then you've then got back into powerlifting. Did I see that you've got the what? Who you got a new coach?
That's right. Yeah. So I was this was like end of last year. So I would say last year, so 2020, I was still very much in the fitness menopause. So like I was still trying like bits of bodybuilding. I was like really deprioritizing training. So I was just doing like 3 sessions of 45 minutes a week. And then I was chatting with my girlfriend and saying like, none of this excites me. Like none of this, I don't get motivated for the gym anymore. I don't want to train. This used to be like such an exciting part of my life. And because she came with me to Europeans and Worlds, and she saw like how into it I was, and that's a big part of me that had just disappeared. So I thought like, well, what is it that of anything that actually I find motivating? And the only thing that I find motivating really is I still have this like local deadlift record. So in the 93 kilos, in the Y and EPF, in the GBPF, in the IPF, so this like super specific thing, I have the deadlift record. And I was like, well, wouldn't it be cool if I could just bump that a bit further out of reach? Right, like if I could get back down to 93 kilos and I could push that just further away so that no one ever, I mean, I'm sure they will, but you know, if I could break it one more time, that'd be pretty cool. And I kind of know that it's going back into the same mentality, but at the same time, if chasing that gets me back into a rhythm of enjoying training and just enjoying the process again, like I'm kind of happy to pay the price. So I was like, right, I'm going to train again. Who would be the person I would like trust more than anyone else to train me? And it's a guy called, who we met a couple of times. We've had him on the podcast a couple of times. He's called Mike Toucher. He, I guess, popularized RPE-based training. So I don't know whether your listeners have ever heard of that. I assume they will. So he's come up with a lot of frameworks behind that. He's been coaching me for 3 months or so now. So yeah, I would say I'm like for the first time in a couple of years, really. I feel like I'm like back to where I was in terms of how I feel about my training, which is cool.
There you go. And you've got the garage gym as well, right?
Yeah. Very lucky for that. I mean, that's something I've had for a very long time, but never really like used as much as I could. And then obviously with gyms are still closed in the UK, so kind of been forced to. So I've like added little bits to it to make it a bit more usable, a bit more appealing. And I'll probably just continue training in there, to be honest, because it's so much quicker. Like not having to drive to the gym saves a lot of time.
Absolutely, and you could just go all out and get it done without even leaving your house. It's perfect.
Exactly, yeah. Like leave one room and I'm in the gym, basically.
Was that like part of the reason that you were like you got back into the powerlifting? Was it because you were sort of having to do it all at home? Like it's quite an easy, accessible sport compared to, or pursuit, I guess, compared to others, or was it just that, like, how did you find that groove again? Like, what made you really realize that I want to get back to powerlifting?
I think just so like to get my lifts to where they are, and I suppose I tried when I tried CrossFit, I tried Olympic weightlifting, right? And I was like, right, I'm going to set some targets for Olympic weightlifting. I'm going to set some targets for like Fran and all these things. And you realize, like, I realized really quickly that like all my deadlift has no carryover to that really at all. And you're like, well, of course it doesn't, because like people who are really good at clean and jerk or snatch have been doing that longer than I was doing deadlift. Like I get it to, I just stand up, with a bar in my hands, and that there's quite a lot of practice going into just that. And now I want to get it to over my head. And I think I realized just how much practice I put into this sport, into powerlifting, to get to even the level I'm at. And it felt like I was throwing it away a little bit by stopping. So I actually I started training again with zero expectation. Like I had no intention of competing again. I was like, I'm just going to do some really light, really easy, like powerlifting style training and just learn to enjoy it again.
5x5.
And I was doing that. Yeah, exactly. I was doing that for a couple of weeks, and then just the eye of the tiger came back, I guess.
Nice.
Just
so it wasn't, you didn't like sit down and you didn't do the Because I know you're quite big on doing that, the goal setting and things like that. So it wasn't a case of looking at those sheets and be like, oh yeah, actually this is really important to me.
The conversation with my girlfriend about it was kind of the trigger to, yeah, I'm going to start training again. Like I'm going to start doing powerlifting again, and I'll just slowly move more towards that direction. And around the same time, to mention Lane Norton again, I saw him post something about it being his birthday on Instagram, and he was like, I can't remember exactly, but I think I figured out that he was like, I think he's just about to turn 40 or something like that, or he's 39. And so I was like, shit, like that means that when I competed against him, he was like 4 years older than I am now. And he was at that level. And he was like he won a gold medal in squat. So I'd kind of discounted it and thought, like powerlifting's for people who are like 22, but so seeing that, having that conversation with my girlfriend, realizing that, if I put 4 years in, I'm at where Lane was when he was at the top of his game. It's it just felt motivating again for some reason.
Yeah,
I don't know why. I don't know
4 years knowing what you know, like having learned all the lessons that you've learned already. So yeah, it's not like you're starting again 4 years from being 22-year-old Jonny. It's
yeah. But I think having time away from anything, like any sport or any pursuit, like having a proper break from it is important as well. So I feel like I've given myself that, and that's probably what's recreated some of the motivation as well.
Yeah. So what does your training look like now? You mentioned that you were doing 3 sort of 45-minute sessions. I'm assuming it's a lot more.
It's a bit different, yeah. It's like 5 2-hour sessions ish. Squat, bench, deadlift plus accessories. I've just recently bought like a velocity, a bar speed tracker.
Oh yeah. Like Teixeira loves those things. Yeah.
He does. Yeah.
Your training for that. Yeah.
Exactly. So part like RP is basically subjective ratings of like, if you do a single, how many more reps could you have done? If you could have done 1 more rep, it's a 9. If you could have done 2, it's an 8. And then the back off work is based off that basically. So all my training is pretty much a top set with that you then say, well, if that was a single at an 8, then I probably could have done this weight on that day for an all-out single. So then if I do like 80% work, it's based off that estimated max for the day. So my training is always moving around based on like how recovered I am or how I perform on that day, basically. And I suppose his whole thing is you try and put the right weight on the bar and do the right number of reps with it for what you're capable of on that day. So it's all that really. But it is very much powerlifting work. It's squat, bench, deadlift, and then some bench variations, deadlift variations, and squat variations with an occasional like barbell row in there. But it's pretty specific, to be honest.
But if did you say 5 2-hour sessions ish?
Yeah, more or less.
It's a lot of volume.
It's
interesting because people think that they can get the same, that it's like strength, because they look at strength work and they see that it's low reps. They're like, oh, this will take me like faster if I can do it, or especially if I do clusters. And it's like that is okay to like bump up your 1 rep max up by like a 5-10% or something if you're like fairly low level trained. But then to get stronger from that, like you plateau real quick doing that sort of style of training. And it's like the actual work it takes to get stronger is actually completely different to the work it takes to sort of express that strength. Does that make sense?
Yeah, completely. And like, there's also a function of, when if you're fairly new to training and your 1 rep max squat is, I don't know, 130 kilos or something, to work up to 80% of that, it doesn't take that long. And there's only a certain number of warm-up sets you can do between bar and that. So the stronger you get, the more kind of warm-up time there is, the longer it takes to reach your top set. And you're still just a human, right, with like bones and ligaments, and it's there's a lot more kind of strain that goes into moving a heavier barbell.
Yeah.
So you need more rest. You can't just do things every minute on the minute or something like that. It might be 3 reps, but if it's 3 reps at an RP 8, that's pretty all-consuming. Like you can't do a 90-second rest typically.
Yeah.
So it does take time.
And then a deadlift's even worse. Like talk about an exercise that's like overall fatiguing.
Yeah. like proper central nervous system shutdown after after a heavy set of deadlifts. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, which is why, like, for my athletes, I rarely do squats, like barbell squats sometimes, but I can't remember the last time I put in a deadlift app for someone that wasn't completely new. And it's because it's just so fatiguing, and like you say, you're all still humans, and for your pursuit, like you've got to back squat, you've got to deadlift, but if you're doing this as a way of doing rugby, like you could say it's so fatiguing, and it's like it just crushes you. Why not try an alternative that doesn't crush you?
Yeah, and there's quite a lot of like associated injury risk with stuff like even just a back squat. Like if you don't have to do it, anything can go wrong really. In like as I mentioned, I got an injury in the bottom of a rep, and I don't think I did anything wrong, right? Like I don't think it was the setup was fine. It felt the same as the previous reps. Just something about that day, and if you don't have to push things like that to train for the sport you're training for, it's probably not worth the risk.
Yeah, but for you, it's like that skill of squatting and deadlifting is also really, really important.
Well, that is the sport, yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be like training for rugby without like ever touching a ball. Or,
Yeah.
There's certain stuff you've just got to do, right? So, and those three lifts are the sport.
Yeah. And I guess in the reverse, it would be like trying to get better at, I don't know, getting better at CrossFit by playing rugby. Like that wouldn't make sense if you.
Exactly. Yeah. Like maybe be some carryover, but like
Yeah.
you're better off practicing the thing that you're ultimately going to be doing.
Yeah, which sort of leads me on to like your actual work with other, clients, and your main focus is like busy people. Is that right? Just because of your background?
Yeah.
What you
that's
guys
exactly
focus on with Propane?
Yeah. So I think when we started doing online coaching, I think Yusuf and I both thought, because at the time we were both we were not powerlifting competing at the time, but we were both into that style of training. So we were thought like, we're just going to work with powerlifters. But you quickly realize like that market's not that big, and even the people in that market, there's a lot of competition. There's a lot of people coaching for free. People don't buy a powerlifting coach necessarily because they see a good ad, right? So the problem that we knew very well how to solve was, well, we both tried to make all this work around 65-hour work weeks in finance. But we knew a lot of people who were still trying and still struggling. So the way that we program and the advice that we give to clients and all that sort of stuff is very, very different. Like I wouldn't be giving someone who has no control over their schedule 5 2-hour sessions a week.
Right.
And like what they're looking for generally is not, they're not looking for a new bench 1 rep max.
No, they're not looking to hold the best deadlift in Newcastle. Powerlifting.
They're not. No, like not generally.
Yeah.
I mean, we do get some inquiries for stuff like that, but the bulk of the people we work with are like your average, usually guys. We don't normally target. We don't like specifically target guys, but I guess we just attract people who sort of see a similarity in where they're trying to get to. Usually guys who are maybe a little bit into lifting, and they're probably doing stuff anyway. They're probably like putting time in anyway, but it's not really working for them. And generally speaking, it's, they'll go into the gym and they'll do like, oh, well, that bench is free, so I'll do some dumbbell work, or like, oh, the cables are free, I should do some flies or something. It's that kind of, and like we've all been there, right? Like we've all.
Yeah, but that still hurts my head. Like I don't understand. Like people do still do that. They go to they'll go to like, that's most people, right? They go to the gym and like, right,
yeah.
What am I going to do now?
Yeah.
And
then,
that's the biggest lesson I've said in every video. It's like, if that's you, then that's number one mistake or number one thing to sort of fix. Go in with a game plan of some sort.
Like spending an hour in the gym with a session that has no bearing to the last session of the last week that you did, and then generally like under consuming protein throughout the day, but having a protein shake as soon as you finish training. It's like, yes, yeah. I suppose it's how Yusuf and I started, so we're very familiar.
We've all been there.
Yeah. And that the route they normally take from that position to get better is like, well, just more of the same, right? Yeah. So if I'm doing 3 sessions a week, like maybe I should do some stuff on the weekend now, and then maybe I need to add like a post-workout shake and a pre-workout shake, and maybe I need some supplements. Like, should I be taking fish oil or creatine? but I'm trying to gain weight and I'm in a calorie deficit. You know, it's those kind of mistakes. So we take someone like that who has a bunch of motivation generally, like they don't need to be told to go to the gym. They just need to point that in a slightly different direction. And usually what we end up giving them is like way less than what they're already doing. Like 2 to 3 exercises a session.
Yeah,
very basic nutritional changes.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes such a difference.
They think they're going to hire you and they're like, oh no, I'm not sure because I'm going to have to do so much more stuff. And you realize that less stuff is so much more because it actually has direction.
Exactly. Yeah. Like, I explain to someone that if you just, like, all you care about is these 3 exercises that you did last week, do an extra rep or do an extra set, or just like, that's your focus. That's all that matters. If you've done that, you can leave the gym. Like, you don't have to squeeze in some arms at the end of the session, right? Like, you've done what you need to do. So get out and like enjoy the rest of your life. But yeah, so that like the majority of people we work with are that. Just because that is a bigger market, like from a business perspective, it's a bigger market.
Yeah.
And we know quite a bit about that. So what it's like to be that person as well.
So then, what would your main takeaways be for people that like they say they don't have any time, but we know that means that they've got some time, but they've got to really figure it out. Like, what would your main process be to like sort of get them going?
As in, like, what would we do?
Yeah.
Or what? So generally, like the time thing is either a lack of prioritization. So it's they're either saying it because they're not really sure they want it, or they're not like clear on what it is that they want, or what they think they have to do is too much, right? Yeah. So like most people can fit it, like even if it's like a 30-minute body weight training session 2 days a week in the morning before you go to work, like you can wake up half an hour earlier generally, or go to bed half an hour later, right? It's just, you just got to find that window of time somewhere.
Yeah.
I think the reason why people don't do anything like that or don't move in that direction at all is they think that that's pointless. So there's no point in even doing that. They think that it needs to be the 5 days a week, 2-hour sessions or nothing. So it's the strategy we generally put into place is, how can we, if we know what the goal is, so if the goal is weight loss or the goal is muscle gain or the goal is strength gain, how can we make the fewest changes to someone's life and start moving a metric that we pick in the right direction? Right. Yeah. So like if your goal is, a lot of guys want to lose a bit of weight, right? They've gained some weight while they're working. They like their lifestyle is taking its toll a little bit. So instead of completely overhauling everything, it's like, let's add in some tiny changes to what they're doing training wise and probably strip away a lot of what they're doing. Let's make some really simple nutritional adjustments, see what happens. And if that works, it's like, well, you don't need to add extra stuff in. You don't get extra points for like doing harder things. So it's making it as easy as possible, making it as simple as possible, allowing someone to just tick the box every day without really noticing they're doing it.
Yeah.
That's generally what we do, which is, I mean, we always get this like, whoa, these calories seem way too high. This training program seems too low volume. Like, too high compared to what? Or like too low volume compared to what? Like, what do you think you should have to do to make progress, even though you're not making progress anyway? So yeah, generally it's easy with what we start with, and we make it more complicated as we need to.
Yeah, the amount of people that are the same thing. It's like they get worried that, oh, this seems way too easy, and it's like, yeah, because like you actually have to start somewhere, because you always go way too hard and then you stop within 10 days. Like if you just keep pushing through, this easiness is going to actually pay off way much more than sporadically trying stuff that's just too hard to stick to. And yeah, you're right. You're right in that expectation. Like that's exactly what it is. They think they don't have enough time because their expectation for how much time they really need is so high unnecessarily.
Because that's the advice that's generally thrown around, right? Like, it's diet plans and it's things that are difficult. Like you need to not eat any carbs. Like not eating any carbs is so difficult to do. So difficult to do. And if they think that that's the bar to even get the needle moving, it's like, well, what do I have to do to get into like the shape of a men's health cover model? Like what must that look like? Well, it must be really difficult. So when someone says just train once a week, it's like, whoa, no, like that's never going to work.
Yeah, but it is an industry where it's letting people down. I think it's like in so many different ways, and that's definitely one of them. It's like sets up, but because I guess that's because you've got to choose that line between entertainment and like because it's the entertaining stuff that's always going to be the extreme stuff, and that's what always gets.
Yeah. Well, no one really wants to hear that it's just simple, quite difficult things done for a very long period of time,
No,
do
no.
they?
I
Like
make that
that's
joke. Like it's like Men's Health would like stop selling as magazines if they just kept saying, "Oh, it turns out broccoli's still good for you." Like tune in next month. You know what I mean? Like
yeah, it's got to be the next
yeah.
drama ridden headline, isn't it? Yeah, definitely.
Which I saw they're giving Joel. I'm not gonna get into it. I'm not gonna get into any sort of things that annoy me. So you said earlier, like you make some, you set your busy guys like calorie goals and stuff. So is that always what you do? Because again, I think it's a time thing or I eat out a lot thing, but people tend to sometimes push back on tracking their diet, and which is kind of confusing to me because I've done it since like 20 probably 11. I think when I was actually like I had to use like a spreadsheet thing and that had a load of like
Yeah,
spreadsheet macros, not macros. That it was a ball ache, and that I stuck to for 2 weeks. But now you've got MyFitnessPal with its huge database. You've got so many different other software. Do you always give people macros and suggest that that's how they do it?
yeah, yeah. Like I think we feel quite strongly about this. We do get people say like, I don't want to track, and that's like it's a coaching
Oh,
conversation.
I don't know what just happened
What?
there. Hold on, my screen's gone. Carry on.
Can you still hear me?
I'll figure it out. Now I don't know what's happened. I told you I've been playing around with this thing too much.
Too many complicated bits of software. We'll
Here we
be all
go.
good though, yeah.
I'm gonna add myself. Now we're good. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So if someone says like I don't want to track macros, which we do sometimes get, we see that as a like we need to have a conversation with that person about figuring out why, because I put it in the same category as like I want to save money, but I don't want to look at my bank account, or it's like it can be tricky to look at the numbers, but you've got to you've got to track something. You've got to monitor something, because what you're doing right now is not achieving the result you want, and we need to kind of know. Back to what I was saying, right? Like you don't want to just slash your calories and then make that the only change. You want to have you want to have cards still to play. So if you can drop 250 calories from what you're eating on a daily basis and start losing weight and barely even notice it, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Right? That's an amazing position to be in. But to be able to make changes like that, you have to have the data and know what's going on. So the way I always pitch it to people is because people respond and say, well, it's too restrictive. It takes too much time. I don't want to be like glued to my phone and tell me what to eat. My reply is like, it takes me, and I imagine you're the same, TJ, like it takes me like five minutes a day maybe to track my macros.
Do you do it in the
And that's
morning?
like usually like before my last meal is generally when I do it.
And
So
you
like
just do the whole day?
yeah, so I have a pretty like consistent daily intake of what I eat. Like breakfast and lunch generally the same. The thing that varies is what I eat for dinner usually, because I eat dinner with my girlfriend. So like I'll plug everything in, including the meal I'm about to eat, before dinner, and make sure that like when I eat what I'm about to eat, it just lines me up for the day and I'm done. I barely have to think about it. But that 5 minutes of like discipline creates all the flexibility and
Yeah.
creates the like, if I want to have something different, I can. If I want to have dessert, I can. I just have to like take it off tomorrow. And it's a skill set. I think it's a skill set that if you really learn it,
Yeah.
and that becomes how you see your nutrition, it becomes a bit of a game, but it also frees up all this stuff. It's like, do you want to go out for dinner on Saturday? Yeah, no problem. Let me move my numbers around for the week and just make it work. No problem. Like it's fit in without any issues. Versus like, well, there's no meal plan in the world where the dinner that I want to have on Saturday will be on it, right? Like I'm going to have to somehow, I've got to change something to make that work. So people think it's restrictive. I actually think it's more flexible. And if you've got to have something different to what you're doing. And if that's just 5 minutes a day of plugging some numbers into your phone, I think that's a pretty good deal, personally.
Yeah, it's so right. It's I like it's just quantifiable. I always say that's like my like because if you can't put any data, if you haven't got any data, you can't make any alterations really without knowing what's going on. So, like, once, and then the other thing is like the education side of things. Like, you learn like so many. Like, I think every time I get people that haven't tracked before and they start tracking, there's like 3 different foods that they're eating consistently that they thought were the healthiest. Like granola is always one. I thought granola is healthy. It turns out I was eating 1,000 carbs for breakfast every morning.
Lethal.
Like, 1,000 calories. Yeah. And like, so you learn those things, and then you realize that once everything gets quantified, then you can manage it better. And that flexibility is the other one. Like, it just removes. Like, I find that if I track, I've started tracking, like the night before or the morning as well, or like to set out my day, and then even most of the time I won't track dinner, and I just feel so much more freer because you're not making, because if you have to open the fridge, it's the same thing. I think it's like going to the gym and figuring out what to do once you're at the gym. If you open the fridge and you know exactly what you're going to eat, like, it's so much easier just to stick to that. And then if you find like lower calorie options, if you're on a calorie restriction, you don't have so much room to eat at night. Or if you're someone that's trying to gain and you can have a higher calorie option in the reverse, it still works as well. I'm glad that you don't let any, it's rather than saying, oh, here's another way that you can do it without knowing what you're eating. You're right. You stick with it.
Yeah. And like, I'm convinced that having, like, if you want to have like a, cheat day, having like instead of doing that, like so I suppose there's 2 scenarios someone wants a cheat day. One of them is like they've been in a calorie deficit for so long that they can like physiologically tell that they're depleted and they're tired and all that sort of stuff. And the other is you're just craving like a type of food, right? So having 3 slices of your favorite pizza that fit into the macros for the day is way more rewarding than just having an entire pizza and blowing your diet for the week, right? Like there's something about having food you enjoy and it's still kind of being compliant with your goal that makes it actually more enjoyable.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It feels like you're kind of like, I shouldn't be doing this, right?
It sort of helps get rid of cravings as well. It keeps you like more consistent because then like you're able to eat this stuff and stay on track. And because I think the cravings come from that's the fact that you're not allowed them, like that.
Yeah.
And then it becomes a case of, well, if I'm going to have this one thing that I'm not allowed, I might as well just fucking do everything, and then diet starts Monday, and then you sort of recycle.
And I think you see things for what they are, right? So like you see granola as like, if you have 2,000, like a budget of £2,000 for the day, granola is a very expensive thing to buy with that budget. Like you can, but you're going to have to then not have much for the rest of it. I think you don't see foods as black and white. You see them as, well, that's very calorie dense, or that's not very calorie dense. And that has a lot of protein in for the calories, or not very much protein in for the calories. So, yeah, I mean, it's the way that we coach everyone. We're not really a fan of, I think, like going after the route of that, habit-based approach, or like a palm or a fist or a thumb, and kind of measures in other ways. They're just ways of attacking the same thing without
being
really
less
looking.
accurate.
Yeah, and without like looking at what actually matters, which is the numbers.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so last 3 questions. This is one that I'm enjoying asking in a minute, but what does the fitness industry look like in 20 years' time?
So I think there'll probably be more innovative solutions to like try and help people, but I can't help but think that people will probably still be struggling with things like weight loss and muscle gain, and because it like violates the way the world is moving is more in the direction of quick and easy, and further away from difficult and kind of rewarding delayed gratification, which I think true fitness achievement, whether it's like hitting a new 1 rep max or getting abs, you can't buy those things. You have to, the only way to access those things is to literally say, I'm going to sacrifice right now. Like I'd ideally not go do this 2-hour session. I'd ideally not track my macros, but I'm going to do it because in 6 months' time, it'll pay off. I think we'll still have that problem in 20 years' time. If anything, it might be worse. But I think there'll be a lot more apps. There'll be a lot more kind of tech-based, ways of tracking. Might take a photo of your food and it uploads it into my fit. Like, be a lot more solutions like that. But I think the core problem really is that like a lot of people don't make the progress they want because of a deep like emotional misalignment that,
Yeah.
you know, if it's easier to overeat today and to not exercise today and forget about tomorrow than it is to do the things that are compliant. So I think like
And there's
unless
not
there's a
really a
huge
tech
change,
solution to sort of the only
exactly,
ones that
yeah,
the only things that sort of tap into that and get closer, like you know how different apps they do like streaks and stuff, and they try to sort of gamify it. But that still doesn't. If anything, that does more harm than good as well.
yeah, yeah. It's, I mean, like it'd be great if everyone was shredded and massive in the future, right? But like,
Yeah.
I just think probably, I mean, it might be easier to do and it might be simpler from a tech perspective. There might be like simpler solutions, and maybe we'll figure out a way to make it easier to change your behaviors and stuff like that. But failing that, I think will probably, it might even be worse because
Yeah.
go back, like, I think there's something in behavioral economics where they look at how easy it is to acquire a cupcake as like as an index, right? And then if you go back 50 years or I don't know 100 years and you want a cupcake, you have to like go to the shop, buy the ingredients, come back, make it yourself, and then eat it, right? Whereas now, like, how long do you think it would take you to get a cupcake?
I could order a cupcake on my laptop here, right? And not literally not leave my
Like,
chair.
how ridiculous is that?
Yeah, that
Like,
is
you could have a
fucking
cupcake at your
insane.
house. In like, you could have pretty much whatever you want
Probably
in your
30
house.
minutes.
Yeah, within an hour.
Yeah.
And so, like, that means there's even more pressure on you to be like, no, 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 I don't want a cupcake.
Which I mean, that's a
Right?
good thing, right? That like this,
It,
that's the way of the world. But it
yeah,
teaches some. There's something underlying that it teaches the brain that isn't a good thing. And you're right. Like, there's no tech solution to that. The only thing I can think of, and this is something I've been promoting with this question, is like there must be, there'll probably be more pharmacological solutions, like you know they're trying out these carb blockers or appetite suppressants, and they're all a bit dodgy. But I can't help but think in 20 years time they might be better. But even then, it's like that's just pushing the urge, the physical urge to eat a bit further back. But I don't know if that's gonna really help. Like there's still that's the only thing I
yeah.
can think of. Like
And you're right. Like, you know, get around it by just chemically altering people, and I'm sure that would work. Um, but I think like the main problem is that everything in our lives is becoming easier to get now,
yeah,
right? Like whether that's like dating or texting someone, calling someone, being able to have a video call on demand, or watching TV or whatever on demand. Like fitness is the same. So you're right. Like I think either it'll go down the route of like pharma companies will just take care of it for us. We won't even have to try, or it'll be worse than it is now.
yeah,
Just because of the way we're being like trained by big tech. You know, like all social media is just yanking on that chain, and all we want is immediate gratification. You don't get that from an hour-long training session, right? You don't leave the training session, look at yourself, and be like, "Wow, yeah, I've added an inch to my
yeah,
arms." Like I think
yeah.
it's worse. You spend the next hour like feeling tired. You're sore the next day. You got to do it again tomorrow,
Yeah.
and you're hungry. Like that's the opposite of post something on social media and get 100 likes. So hopefully the trend changes and people, you know, boycott those things and decide to take the longer term approaches. But I am a bit skeptical. I think it
Evidence
might end up
based.
being worse. Yeah.
Yeah, you're
Yeah.
right. All right. So then, if people are gonna push their feelings back, you know, they're gonna bite the bullet. They're gonna take this long term approach and actually go into the gym. What's one song that they have to put in their playlist?
Yeah. So I have a pretty weird taste in music, actually. Well, I get told all the time it's weird. So I'm into like either like really heavy metal or like quite heavy like EDM dubstep
Yes.
music. Yeah. But there's like what I would put on for right now for a like a one rep max attempt is a band called Beartooth and a song called Enemy. That will be
Beartooth.
my yeah. Something that I've noticed as well, like as a general tip, if you're in the gym and you're wanting something to like really psych you up, take your favorite band or favorite song and look on YouTube for them doing it live somewhere.
Ah,
Generally, that like so any DJs you like, listen to a live set of them. It's
yeah.
way better. It's just like atmosphere, and there's something about that in the gym that's better than like listening to it on Spotify or whatever. So that'd be a general tip, even if you don't like Beartooth, which most people don't. Then yeah, that would be my
That's
tip.
a good idea, actually, the live set, because it's like, you spend forever pressing next, 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 looking for the right song, and it's never going to come about. So if you've
Exactly.
got a live
Yeah.
set on, perfect. All
Yeah.
right.
Stick like your favorite DJ on for an hour. Performing live somewhere is pretty good.
And then where can people go and find out more information about you?
Propanefitness.com. Simple as that.
And it's easier than you don't want Instagram followers or anything like that, right?
It's all
It's all Propane Fitness, right? It'll all be in the LinkedIn
yeah.
thing below.
It's all linked. Yeah.
It's one
So
of those
I
things
guess
that
like
it's obligatory for me to say, just because I've got to make sure that we put it all in the description. But it's all going to be there. So.
well, I mean, you can do. We have an Instagram. We do have an Instagram. But yeah, I mean, the reason I say the website is like everything's on there. So we have a free macro calculator. We have links to like the business stuff that we do. We have links to our YouTube, our Instagram, our podcasts. So it's all in one big hub.
Beautiful. All right, mate. It's been a pleasure having you on, mate.
Thanks for having me. It's been
Check
awesome.
out